Didn't answer me, just said that they don't let me say it. She wouldn't answer me. She just said they wouldn't let me talk. Day after day, this happens one after another. Many times I steal halfway home, through the yard door, can hear her in the house talking to someone. I always feel bad, and Mom said a few times, advised her to send her little sister in someone else's home, but Mom does not want to owe a favor, and just lock her in the house like this. However, I know that this is not normal. Big sister. Little sister called me. I came in from outside, and saw at once that her face was waxy and yellow, as if she were a bystander. What's the matter? I'm hungry, want to eat meat and potatoes dialect, steamed buns, then cornmeal. At this time is already 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon light, and then a little while to do dinner. I want her to hold back, but she said a sentence inexplicable but teach a person's heart tight words. Too late, let me eat a bite, I have to go. What do you mean she can't make it? What do you mean she's leaving? How could a 4-year-old child say such a thing? I didn't know how to answer her, but just said, okay, I'll make a fire and warm it up for you. It's all frozen hard. She shook her head and said, no, I'll just put it on the Kong and warm it up for a while. So I used the back of the knife to smash down a small piece of ham to her. She covered the quilt, will be that piece of meat and potatoes clutched in the palm of the hand into the quilt, melt a little, then nibble a little bit. A small piece of meat and potatoes did not eat. She said, big sister, can you ask Mom to come in, I want to see her. When she spoke, her expression was as reluctant as when she said goodbye, and her tears were in her eyes. Integral busy went out to shout at her mom, who was outside pushing the mill, and when she heard me, she drank without looking back. Don't you see that I'm busy? So many mouths to eat, do not come to help, what are you looking at? It's not like you're dying. I went back into the house again and told her that her mother was busy and would come in later. But she prayed and begged me, telling me to make sure Mom came in, to look at her again, to hug her again. Integral, I could only go out again. Mom, just come in for a minute. My sister looks like she can't make it. Only after saying this did she impatiently spit out her work and go into the house cursing. Just inside the house, the little sister jumped into her arms, tears streaming down in bunches, did not say a word, just hugged her tightly, like in this life's parting. Unspecified currency. Also see her bad, let me quickly call the neighbors to look for Dad to go. I called out to the neighbor's brother through the wall, asking him to find my father and the doctor. A short while later, the doctor came. Dad told the second sister to go to the backyard to find the eldest uncle. The eldest uncle is the hero of our family, knows Kung Fu, walking in the Jianghu for many years. Before he came, the doctor just said that the little sister has typhoid fever, a shot will be fine, so take out the syringe to give her a shot. Unspecified currency. Want to put her on the bed, but she is wrapped around the neck and will not let go of the color. Worse, the back door slammed. Uncle got up, lifted the curtains, his eyebrows were tightly wrinkled up, his voice is loud, this urgent, the words like a thunderbolt. But let everyone more scared. Let me quickly light the fire, the faster the better, and let Mom hold the child tightly, and also let the child's mother, the better. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to do that, but I'm going to be able to do it. A strange thing happened. The whole box of matches, two matches, not a single one can be struck. The task force of people also heard the news to come, surrounded her shouting her name. She just smiled at them and said, I'm going to go, and then I'll sing you a song. How could she bear it? At the last second, she let out a big breath, turned her head, leaned softly on Mom's shoulder, closed her eyes, and the life-saving match in Uncle's hand was lit. Everyone cried, and Mom held her and wouldn't let anyone move, saying she was just asleep and would wake up soon. Uncle jumped onto the stove, pulled up the pot on the stove, turned it over and snapped it to the ground. I clearly saw a row of small footprints on the thick ashes at the bottom of the pot. Uncle said that was the child's soul went down the chimney. Just like that, my little sister died. The family can no longer hear the sound of her singing, can no longer hear her call me big sister. Every time I look at her wooden cupboard on the bowl, cannot help but sob. Integral, just blame yourself for why she said she was hungry, did not light the fire to give her hot the cold meat and potatoes. Perhaps she would not have died. Village rules: the child died cannot be buried. There is a small hill at the head of the village. All the dead children with a broken mat roll thrown on the slope. Not an hour, will be wolves. Crows snatch food, the sooner they are eaten up the better, said to be able to reincarnate early again for the sooner they are eaten up, the better, meaning they can be reincarnated as human beings again. So, my sister was rolled up in a ragged mat, and my uncle sent her away with my father. I sent her away in the afternoon, but when I went to see her again in the evening, she was not damaged at all. Her body was still warm to the touch, and there was no stiffness in her body, just as if she were asleep, but the mat was open. Dad retied the mat, and uncle home, talking about it. All feel strange, but also feel pity. The next day to go back to see, still intact, just to the sky face but turned to the direction of home, the mat is still open. Pa ties it again. At night, 12 o'clock just after, because no one can sleep, close the lights, Dad just smoking female sign when the whole family heard of footsteps, the sound of fine, a listen to know is the little sister. We are excited to turn up. Mom gestured us not to make a sound. We are all lying on the Kong, did not dare to out of a word, listening to the sound of a distant and close to the yard. And then into the house of the sound of the voice of the sound of the road through the inner room in front of the door, but the sound of the voice of the door, but the sound of the door, 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 the sound of the door. I can't see anything, then I heard the movement of a small bench, and finally the sound of a small spoon, squeaking, scraping the bowl. I think she was hungry and came back to look for food. Waiting for her to finish eating, footsteps from the original way to leave, disappeared in the silence of the night. Turn to look, Mom face is already in tears. For 3 days in a row, during the day, Mom did not want to give up, always go to see, every time to go, said she was fine, the body is still soft, the face is also red plain, not like dead, just like sleeping, always want to carry her back, maybe still live, said the tears came down. And then go to see her, Mom far away from the feeling of fear, the back of the cold, not for anything else, just far away from the mat can be seen open, just as the head and turned in the direction of home. Mom dare not go forward per thousand as far from sitting in tears per thousand to have been 5 or 6 days. The other dead children have long been eaten, but she is still good. How do not let a person be afraid of? During the day, uncle came, listened to these things, decisive decision to sister cremated, or so afraid of hurting the family when the other children, ashes in the door outside the circle. The next day, with dad and brother went together. Mom was afraid to dare to go, just watch from afar. Dad set up a woodpile, uncle will be the sister put up, and then lit. Sister's body was burned by the fire, and immediately jumped up and sat down, turn over, repeatedly. Tossing and turning, watching Mom's heart trembling. It was over, my sister had completely turned into flying ash and ceased to exist, and at night, we could no longer hear her footsteps, and for a while we were all lost. On the morning of the 7th day, a 9-year-old boy from another family died. This seems to have become a pattern, the village, whenever a girl dies, there will be a boy will die, or and vice versa, adults, old people likewise. This little boy's family is extremely poor, so poor that they cannot wear clothes, shoes, winter, wearing broken shoes, feet are painful red and purple. His mother gave him a pair of soles, one on the help, the other is not yet on, the child is dead. The boy's mother stood outside the door all day long holding the shoes that were not ready, shouting the name of the child, shouting for him to come back, shouting for him to put on the shoes, but winks, but where to shout back to the figure of the son of love? Only the sound of that miserable voice calling lines of bitter tears. I remember. As soon as my sister died, my parents decided to move, the brigade found us another house, and the family of the dead son also moved. The empty house was knocked down the wall, repair, built into a small school, looking for an old man to look after the door. The old man lived in the house where we had lived. Every morning, he woke up in the yard. 3 days later, he was wrapped in twine used for the soles of the shoes. The twine. Where did the twine come from? There is a family's old lady will knit the soles of shoes, will rub the hemp thread, bought to earn money, overnight, rubbed a good small basket of hemp thread are gone, his home and the elementary school rotten distance of 4 or 5 miles, those lines will not fly to themselves. Later, the brigade decided to demolish the house to repair, such as digging, only to find that there are 2 coffins under the ground. Coffins, there are 2 sets of bones, each body bones are wearing with the 2 women I saw in the middle of the night a scene like, it is said that this mansion is a rich man's, these 2 women should be the concubine of the rich man. In the coffins also found a small jar, according to rural customs, where the buried people must be in the coffin to put a small jar, which holds half a jar of rice, and then a small jar of rice, and then a small jar of rice. According to the rural custom, all buried people must put a small jar in the coffin, which holds half a jar of rice, and then sealed with red paper, buried in the coffin together. When people took out the jar, the paper is sealed, just buried for many years, see the wind on the melt, we found that the rice inside is gone, but more a toad, that thing, eyes suddenly red and green, from the jar jumped out and ran, no one knows how it went in. Only the neighboring villages began to make a constant noise, said someone saw a child walking on the road in the middle of the night, a moment into a giant, a moment and then into a dwarf, so repeatedly, and later still invited a Taoist priest to expel it away. Since then, no more strange things happened in that school.